Good morning, everybody. Orin J here with another Sword of Convallaria video, and today we're going to be doing a little tier list sort of thing for epic level gear in Sword of Convallaria. As global accounts are approaching that in-game level, I want to talk to you about epic gear that I consider as good or better than legendary gear in this game. Because when you're talking about leveling your gear to level 60, it is a big investment in Elysium coins and gear leveling dust, two bottlenecks that are going to hit you really hard. So you want to be very specific which gear you're leveling up. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to sort my epic level gear into 3 tiers. Tier 0, which means better than most legendary gear in the game. Tier 1, which means as good as most legendary gear in the game. And then tier everything else. And if it's in tier everything else, I probably won't even talk about it because don't mess with leveling it up. But there's definitely some epic gear that you're going to want to mess with leveling up in this game. So let's go look at it. I'm going to jump into my inventory, jump into my gear, and sort by epic. But before I do, I will show you this. I consider level 50 a decent leveling breakpoint in this game. Like if there's gear that you use sometimes and you don't know if you should fully commit, level 40, level 50 is a decent spot to sit on it. You can see I have a ton of legendary gear at level 50, and then stuff that I use literally every fight, I go ahead and level to 60, but that 50 to 60 jump is a little bit of push in your resources. Still, let's talk about epic gear because that's the point of today's video. Now, I got a lot of epic gear. You can tell early, basically like what I don't use. If it's level 1 and there's just a bunch of dupes of it, I probably don't use that piece of gear, but I'm gonna go down the list right here and put some of the stuff I do use into tiers. And I'll just start with the dueling dagger. Now the dueling dagger, I'm gonna put into tier 1, which is as good as most legendary pieces in this game. Where it falls short is in its base stats, like legendary gear at level 50, just gonna have a little bit better base stats. But the buff on this, when attacked from the front or side, getting the defense buff is so valuable in certain situations. Like if you're fighting one of the weapon farming bosses and it's the physical damage one and you can guarantee it's going to hit you from the front or side, you are talking about at 5 stars getting a 25% physical defense buff. That's insane. That is as good as legendary gear, and in fact in a lot of cases for like tanking units, better than legendary gear. A great way to access a little bit of extra physical defense for your units, and this is a sword that I use quite a bit. That's why I have it sitting at level 50. I've gotten a little bit unlucky that I only have it at 3 stars. This is a piece of gear that, you know, if I did a auto run on some weapon farming room and I got a couple drops of this, I'd be very happy. This is a piece of gear that even after I have one at 5 stars, I will probably take. I'll start building another one up to 5 stars. I think it's that good. So dueling dagger, I'm going to put that at tier 1. Now, the next piece of gear I want to talk about, we'll scroll down a little bit, is the ink totem. Ink totem is a placeholder. I'm going to put it at like tier 1.5. If you just need some extra healing, I think you can get away with using ink totem. I think at the end game, like at true end game, this falls down to tier, it's epic with everything else. And especially if you don't have, and I can sort by all, there's a legendary piece of gear that also gives healing up. Here you go, the reorganized cube. So this is better, right? So once you get ink totem, it's immediate, or once you get reorganized cube, ink totem is immediately outscaled. But, and I guess I could sort by level, huh? That'll make this a lot easier. Let's sort by level. There we go. So ink totem, very usable early game, but I think at late game falls down to tier everything else. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about, the unique coat. This is physical damage taken decreases by 30% and it cools down every 2 turns. I'm going to group unique coat and rejection mask into the same category here. These are 2 pieces of gear that I think in the early late game are invaluable. Having access to this damage reduction buff, especially once you get it to 5 stars and the cooldown is reduced to 2 turns, I use these all of the time. Now I will say that I think in the true late game, these will probably fall down to that tier 1.5, but where we currently are in global, I consider these tier 1 pieces of gear where I am using them all the time. All the time. Like if I'm fighting a boss that does magic damage and I know I'm not going to be getting hit every turn, I can guarantee a 30% damage increase every 2 turns. Sometimes these bug out. That is definitely something that holds these back. There are certain situations, and I wish I had a run recorded or something, and I've seen other people talk about it too, where this will proc the first time, but never proc again. That sucks. That would lower this down. Like if you're experiencing that bug or you can't get this to proc correctly, that definitely tears this down to 0. But in its purpose, like the purpose of this is really useful. And so you have a magic damage one and a physical damage one. And I do use these quite a bit. You can see I have them at level 50. I would say in the early late game, these are tier 1, as good as some legendary pieces. In the true late game, once your characters are level 60 and you have legendary gear that's better, they probably fall off into that like all the rest of legendary gear pieces. But I'm very comfortable having these at level 50 on my characters. Okay, I want to talk about this one real quick, the Coexist armor. This is one that I've used on a lot of my characters that gain shields, but I don't think this is actually tier 0 or tier 1. I don't think Coexist armor is necessarily a great piece of gear to have. It's obviously a piece of gear that will decrease your damage by 10% when healthy, but the only way to like maintain healthy is to have shields up all the time. If you can guarantee a shield all the way up, you could guarantee taking 10% less damage, but otherwise I think this one not super great, but maybe something that you could get away with running like Pinnacle on if you want to have like a very specific build. Otherwise, I don't think this one's great. Another one that I thought was really OP when the game launched, but now I think falls off into that like tier everything else at late game is the Spring Tonic. I will say that as the early game progressed, I used this all of the time. This is one of the first pieces of gear I hit to level 50 because it's just something I would like auto throw on people, and I felt really good about it. I was like, yeah, I'll just give them Spring Tonic. They have a little 45% heal. That's great. The problem here with this piece is even at 5 stars, you can only use it one time per battle. If this had multiple uses, like 3 or 4 uses per battle, then I think it would be better. But 45% heal one time is just not that impactful late game. If you're a character that needs healed over and over again, you need to be getting that from a more reliable source than the Spring Tonic. So my feeling on this has changed. When the game launched, I thought this was great. Now I think it's just another epic piece. I will not be focusing on building up another one of these to level 50 or 60. Okay, now let's get to the really, really good stuff, and I'm going to start with Evergreen Pendant. This is one that I just leveled to 50 today as I got my last duplicate to make a 5-star. It's something that I haven't started using yet, but I'm going to start using immediately. This is tier 0. This thing in the in-game is as good as legendary pieces of gear, if not better than most legendary pieces of gear. It's insane. So when healed, gain 1 random level 2 attribute buff. And at the end game here, like your stats are so important, and like having a bunch of buffs on you and a bunch of debuffs on the enemy is just huge. So every time you're healed, gain a level 2 random buff for 2 turns. You can get healed a lot. Like there's characters that heal themselves. There's characters that heal, like think about a Nana. She can like group heal and then heal 2 other people. You can get a lot of level 2 buffs. If you could stack these up, get your attack and defense and crit and healing and all this up, this is such a powerful piece of gear, and it's generically really good. I really love gear that you can just say, I'm going to level this, and if I don't know what to equip on somebody else, I can always give them Evergreen Pendant, and it will always pay dividends. I think Evergreen Pendant is a tier 0 epic piece of gear in this game. Okay, there's another tier 0 piece, and this is one that once Edda came out, this piece of gear really elevated itself in my mind. That Edda is the one who really helped me start paying attention to like the power of debuffing an enemy boss. And Disaster Bottle, once you get it to 5 stars, is absolutely busted. To be honest, it's worth using at 1 star. Like giving a level 2 attribute debuff to an enemy for 2 turns, 2 times a battle on a 4-turn cooldown is still pretty good. But as you level this thing up, as you star this thing up at 5 stars, you get 2 random level attribute debuffs for 2 turns, and it can be used 3 times per battle with a 2-turn cooldown. Basically meaning that in like most of your boss fights in this game, most of your big PvE fights, you can just keep applying debuffs to the bot. Like hey, just give them 2 level 2 attribute debuffs, then give them 2 more. It's another button that your like support characters have, or it's another button that your DPS characters have. And if you get a little bit lucky here, you can stack debuffs on bosses using this and potentially give them like 0 magic defense or 0 physical defense. Like you can really stack up your debuffs, and this is a great way of stacking debuffs. Disaster Bottle is, no lie, one of the best pieces of gear, whether legendary, epic, or whatever, in Sword of Convallaria. Okay, I'm looking at my notes right here. Those are all the pieces I had written down. Everything else in here I think is just like not great. There's not any other epic gear that I personally use except the ones I just went over. And with those ones I just went over, the ones that I put in tier 0 or tier 1, as I pull copies beyond my first 5th star, like with Disaster Bottle, for example, the next copy I pull will 5-star my Disaster Bottle. That'll be a big power up for my account. I will probably then immediately start building another one to 5 stars. I won't level it straight away because really, like, the bad part, and I can show you this live, is like I don't have these enhanced materials. It would cost me 7,700 of my 17,000 primordial dust. Like that's too big of an ask. And then the dust and Elysium coin cost to level it all the way to 60. I mean, it's such a bottleneck, but it's worth it. Those pieces of gear I just mentioned are worth it, especially the tier 0 ones, the Evergreen Pendant and the Disaster Bottle. If I had to rank them 1, 2, I'd go Disaster Bottle 1, Evergreen Pendant 2. And guys, that is my epic gear video. I will probably do a complete tier list for gear once I have a little bit better feel of it, but you better believe when I do my complete gear tier list, those 2 epic pieces will be on it because I consider them worthy of being on that legendary tier, and those other ones I talked about that I put in tier 1 in this video will find their way onto a legendary gear tier list too, because in this game, epic stuff is just good, and I like that. Okay, thank you guys for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.